Welcome everyone. Welcome to this webinar on design and make vehicles that drive the future. The age of electric mobility brings with us a new set of challenges for the automakers. And these engineering challenges are supplemented with the need for timely validation of ideas, accelerated product development, and faster time to market. In this webinar, we aim to understand the design and make challenges faced by the electric vehicle companies. What is the product development approach taken by some of the market leaders in the Indian EV space, and how software and simulation tools help them along the way? So, we have a fantastic line of speakers today who will be sharing their thoughts and opinions on the subject. Let me start with a quick round of introductions. We are joined by Mr. Pranav Singanapalli from Emote Electric, Mr. Rajiv YSR from ETO Motors, Swagat Rath from Aether Energy, Kiran Pujari from Simple Energy, Abhijit Shah from One Electric, and from Autodesk, we have industrial design expert Samarth Gupta. So thank you, gentlemen, for joining us today and giving us your time. So on the agenda today, we first have a chat between Samarth, Kiran, and Swagat. And in this chat, we are looking to explore the product development approach taken by Aether Energy and Simple Energy. And after the chat, we will move on to the next session. That is a panel discussion of the role of new technologies in the EV design with Rajiv, Abhijit, and Pranav. So, and also audience members can put their questions in the Q&A box that we will try and take in the Q&A session towards the end. So without any ado, let me just call upon Samarth to kickstart the first session. Over to you, Samarth.
Thank you, Priyakshi. So thanks for giving this opportunity. And I just want to put forth my first question to Kiran. That if you can just briefly tell us about your company and the kind of projects that you execute. A brief about what you have done already with your company.
Hi everyone, I'm Kiran from Simple Energy. So right now we are working on premium electric scooter, where normally the electric scooters are not up to the mark. There are people getting these scooters from Chinese, and they are from the CKD method they are building here. So we thought we want to make some product which is made in India, and we developed everything in house. We have developed each and everything from motor controllers, PMS, everything is like no other systems from the off the shelf. So here we wanted to make a scooter which can have a long range, because normally all the EV scooters has range anxiety. So that's the reason what we thought, we want to make a scooter which can be there for a week. If you charge it, if you are going for if you work for an IT or something like that, we charge on Sunday, it will be there for a week. So keeping that in the mind, we have a scooter which is having 240-kilometer range. Okay, so which considering a lot of things into that, where power consumption, everything is controlled. We have taken a lot of engineering in that, a lot of battery simulation we have done to get the optimal range from that. So right now we have achieved more than 200 plus kilometer range from our scooter. So that's the reason we will be launching our scooter in the month of August. And probably most of them are knowing the August 15 is our launch date, where we'll be showcasing our scooter, where you can, you guys can have a look over that, what kind of technology is there in the battery motor to get the 240-kilometer range, which is there is no, I personally know that, there is no scooter in India which can give more than 200 plus range. So that's our prime goal, and there we have achieved that. So in the launch event, you can look into that, what kind of technologies are involved in building such a long range scooter for the Indian market.
Great. And I think I must say, Kiran, that your choice of launch date is quite thoughtful. 15th of August, man, come on.
Yes.
Okay,
yes,
so my next question to you, Kiran, is that if you can just briefly touch upon the digital transformation journey that you may have experienced at Simple Energy, and if you briefly touch upon or briefly mention any particular project that you are really proud of.
See, right now we are working only on one project. That is like complete focus on getting like a long range scooter. So other than that, when it comes to the digital transformation, so we haven't transferred anything so far. We have in touch with multiple vendor on digitally transforming each and everything. Even we are setting up a factory. So factories coming up with Industry 4.0. Each and every component, every process where logged into the cloud. So we have doing great in that now. So probably in the month of December we'll start our production.
Okay, so the focus, which means for your scooter, is range.
Yes.
For the
See, our prime
scooter.
yes, exactly. Our prime focus was to get more range. So normally I there is no scooter like normally like the maximum range what you get in Indian market is somewhere in 150 something like that. That is something Okinawa is. So we thought of we want to make a wonderful product which should have all the technologies involved into that. So we have pretty good almost all the technologies like our competitor is having. So, and we wanted to make a long way scooter. So that's where we achieved. So you might have heard of our ARA testing, what we did on our prototype, which was, we achieved 233 kilometer. So that was just in testing. We did only check the range, what we can get on the road. As well as we got a range, when we tested on the road was 207. So then we thought, why not we test in the area? Because normally area gets more range to their environmental conditions. So there we got 233 kilometer range. So we have testing our vehicles now. So we are getting good range now. We'll be focusing to get more range out of it. That's where we are planning to get more than 240. So we'll see what happens. And anyway, we'll announce what is our true range, what we are getting in the vehicle so soon.
So Kiran, I'll just stay with you. Apart from range, is there any other factor that you actually think will create a dent in the market, or according to you, is going to be really critical? Like, for example, the vehicle looks, aesthetics of the vehicle, and are you actually invested with any software technology there?
Yes, we have invested a lot of things into that. When you asked, about what was your question? I just missed like someone else asked what's the charging time. So our charging time is 1 hour 15 minutes. It's like fast charging, and the slow charging is somewhere around 1.5 hours.
Okay. Yeah. So is there any Autodesk tool that you are currently using?
Yes,
any technology that you are using from Autodesk?
Yes, we are using Autodesk Elias, which helped a lot in our design phase, which helped to get a optimal surfacing. So, we know that Autodesk is an industry leader in A-class generation. So we are using from the day one.
Okay. Any specific advantage you got using Elias?
Not specific advantage. Advantage of Elias is like we find a lot of engineers who work for this, like who knows these tools very well. So that is, I can say.
Got it. Thanks, Kiran. I'll come back to you. So, Swagat, coming to you, I think we have been working together for years now, and Autodesk and Aether, I mean, they have been collaborating a lot. So just briefly, tell us something about Aether.
Hey, first of all, hello, Samarth, and a big hi to everyone in the audience, right? And I hope everybody's like keeping well, keeping safe, doing well. It's been strange times. Now, coming back to the question that you asked, Samarth, if I were to briefly tell about Aether, Aether was it's an EV company that was started in 2013 by Tarun Mehta and Swapnil Jain, right? And we started from being inside the IIT Madras incubation cell, and from there we moved on once we got funding to Bangalore, and that is where we are sort of operating out of now, right? And our factory is also based out of here. Our R&D center is based out of here, right? 2018 is when we first launched our product, which was the 450 and the 340, right? And what was unique for us at that time was when Aether launched its first product, right? The EV industry specifically had a huge baggage that came along with it, the baggage of having being considered as EV vehicles being considered as very slow, being unreliable, having bad quality. So these were the kind of baggages that existed within the EV industry, right? And we take a sort of pride in transforming that image of the entire industry with the product that we launched, right? And the role that Ather played in making EVs aspirational, not just in terms of visual aesthetics value, but also in terms of performance, in terms of build quality, in terms of reliability, all these things, right? Like we were the first vehicles, we were the first smart and connected vehicle of the country, right? So there were a lot of firsts when Ather launched, and like we sort of played a crucial role in transforming the image of the EV industry, and that's what we intend on doing going forward as well, right? Keep raising the bar even higher.
Correct.
So that's what the intent is. Like till last year, we were present only in Chennai and Bangalore, right? And now we've sort of the focus for us, at least this year and the next coming year as well, is to scale to as many markets as possible within the country, right? What we found is we've made a great product market. Like we found a great product market fit, right? Like our customers really vouch for the vehicle. They really enjoy the product that we have to offer, and we want this to be experienced by as many people as possible in the country, and that's what the focus is going to be for the coming year.
Correct, absolutely. And I think Ather is at the forefront of EV initiatives or EV technology in India. And now it is like almost synonymous with electric vehicle scooters, EV scooters. So I just wanted to understand from you more on your digital transformation journey, because one is the product, but it is like the what. But what about the how? So how did you actually, created such a beautiful product? So if you can just, briefly touch upon your design journey to create such a beautiful product.
See, so there's an interesting question, right? I'm guessing for a lot of people here, my fellow panelists as well, they'd realize that when you're starting up, it's not a very big team that you immediately start up with, right? It's a small team. You've got to be lean, but you've got to sort of work in a way where you're faster than like existing OEMs who've been at it for years together, right? So you've got to find smarter ways of doing things, right? And I think the biggest advantage of going digital or doing a lot of things digitally was the fact that what you could achieve, the optimization you could do with the given resources you have and the given time you have, right? How much advantage you get in terms of, reducing time of doing things. Like, for example, in the past, we've used rendering softwares a lot, right? Like VRED and stuff, right? These kind of things actually reduce your decision-making time by a huge margin, right? I'm not like, and having said that, I don't mean that the traditional ways of doing design or like part aspects of design process like clay modeling and all are of any less importance, but it is all a matter of how you manage resources, like given what you have, and then with what process you sort of follow, right? This is something that we actually do a lot at Ather. We are very flexible in our design process. We don't have a set design process. Each and every project that we do is based on the fact what kind of resources you have, whether it is in terms of number of people, in terms of the time that you have, in terms of the monetary resources you have, right? It's all a matter of optimization, right? And that sort of, you've got to be flexible if you want to work in a smarter way, in a faster way, right?
Correct, absolutely. And couldn't agree with you more that there cannot be a one size fits all approach. And I have actually myself seen that, how you have designed the scooter, but you also did not stop there. You actually designed the charging station also, so that they are in harmony. So exactly. I'm quite, I'm quite enamored by the way you have actually approached your design journey. Any specific tools that you really like from the Autodesk portfolio, or anything that actually really helped you? Because you said that you started your journey right from the beginning when your team was not as big as it is today. And so you really want to actually, talk about it just in few words?
See, I'll tell you which one has the most impact on the design process at Ather, and that would by far be Autodesk Alias, right? That has had the biggest impact when it comes to what we do at Ather, right, in terms of design. So that has created the most amount of impact, right? And also, a lot of times, initially, we were not using a separate visualization software because a lot of visualization, like for quick decision making, can happen to a certain extent within Alias itself, right? And with the frequent updates that keep coming, you guys now have for quick modeling and quick concept updates, you have separate tools as well, which keep on getting added. So I really sort of appreciate Autodesk in working very closely with the community, right? That's using their products, taking the feedback, sort of implementing it soon. There's a lot of revisions that keep happening over the year, right? So actually commendable, and like a big thumbs up to that, actually.
Thank you so much, Ather. And coming from a master designer is like more of a complicated. Just before we end,
call myself that, but
I mean we would call it. Okay, just before we end, just a final question to Kiran. Kiran, this COVID thing, I mean, we all know that it's like everyone knows about COVID. Just my question is that, did it in any way affect your the way you design products or your entire design exercise? And you launched it, you said that it's going to be 15th August. Was it scheduled before? Had there been no COVID?
No, it was scheduled during the COVID only. We didn't have any issues like, people are working from home, and we we had everything in control. So we are achieving our target day by day, and what weekly target, what we have now. So we are achieving. So that's the reason during the COVID only we announced that we'll be launching in August 15th.
Okay. Thanks, Kiran. Thanks, Swagat, and Kiran. All the best for your upcoming launch. Swagat, all the best for your future endeavors, for the Ather's future endeavors, and hope that we continue to see exciting models coming from OEMs like you going forward, and all the panelists also, they are actually coming from the OEMs, upcoming OEMs in the Indian EV space. So really exciting times ahead. With that, I'll give it back to Priyakshi. Priyakshi, please take it from me.
Samarth, I'd just like to give you a note of appreciation for referring us to as OEMs. Because, a lot of people do have this this still a startup, but when it comes to customers, once you are in the market and you're selling, nobody looks at you as startups. Everybody looks at you and starts comparing you as OEMs only. So I'm glad that you sort of acknowledged that here.
Okay, I mean EV, the surge in the EV companies, the adoption of EV vehicles in India has actually changed the traditional systems. Now everyone is an OEM. Everyone is actually designing and manufacturing EVs. So I mean, these are exciting times, and we actually look forward to it. Okay, thanks for saying that, Swagat. I give it back to you, Priyakshi. Priyakshi, please carry on with the next engagement.
Hi, thank you so much, Samarth, Swagat, and Kiran for this. I'm sorry, I had a breakdown with my laptop in between, and so that led to a lot of trouble. So I have switched on to another laptop, but it wouldn't let me use the camera for some reason. So excuse me for that. So thank you very much, all of you. And before we move on to the next session, I will just launch a quick poll and I would request our audience members to please quickly mark their preferences. Okay, we'll move on. Right. So now I would like to invite Rajiv, Abhijit, and Pranav, as well as Samarth, for the next panel discussion. Samarth, I will start with you. So you have been associated with the Indian automotive space as well as with the industrial design space for a long time. So I would like to understand from you, why are EVs so important today, and why do we see suddenly so many startups coming up in the Indian automotive space, entering the space through e-mobility?
Yeah, great question, Priyakshi. So I would like to actually, split the question into two parts. One is from the perspective of the OEM manufacturers or the manufacturers of EV vehicles. And the second part is the customers who are actually purchasing those EVs. The first question is that, why EVs are so popular is like, there are like multiple factors. And the the first and the foremost factor is climatic change. I mean, the way our global temperatures are rising, the way polar ice caps are actually melting, it is actually a cause of concern for everyone. And one of the main mitigation steps is to reduce the consumption of fossil fuels. Now, that actually is pushing companies to invest more and more in electric vehicle technology, or creating more and more EV vehicles. But apart from that, I would say that there are many other factors. Some of them I will discuss. Like today we are at a stage where we can actually harness the wind, renewable energies like wind, solar in a much more efficient way. So which means that we can actually develop these technologies at a lesser price, and they are easily available, and that is actually very good, because then we can actually when the companies can set up grids at not very high cost. There are other social economic factors, political factors also, and some major factors is like because of this urbanization, many people are actually moving to the cities, so the rural population is now shifting to cities. Now this is good because we are growing, the GDP is growing, and so on and so forth. But at the same time, it actually puts a lot of pressure on the existing infrastructure of cities, and there is a need for the cities or the city municipalities to set up public transportation systems, and EV is actually going to play a huge role going forward. So that is why actually there is a lot of noise about EV. Another very, very interesting thing which I would say is that with the advent of mobile phones, GPS enabled data availability so easily on your mobile phones, the entire mobility as a concept has actually undergone a huge transformation. Now you can actually utilize more the transportation system which is available at your fingertips. Like you can just order a Uber or a Ola just with your with the help of your mobile phone, which means that you can utilize your existing EV infrastructure more. And that actually is very important, because if you see the cost of the fixed cost or the initial cost of EVs is quite high, but the total cost of ownership comes out to be quite low, because it is expected that more and more people should use more and more EVs, which will actually bring the overall cost down. So that is also one of the things. The last and very important thing which I feel is very, very important in ensuring that EVs are becoming more and more important is more to do with our geopolitical relationships with countries. Now, India essentially is based IC engine based mobility system. Now, when we have IC engine based mobility system, we are actually dependent on oil. We are importing oil, and such kind of supply chains can be easily disrupted by geopolitical happenings or the external relations with our neighbors or with our country. So to mitigate that situation, it is very, very essential that country like India, such a diverse and such a rich country like India, should actually invest in EV technology. And that is what we have been seeing. Government has enacted NEMPP, and the FAME 2 incentives were given to OEMs to actually manufacture more and more EVs, and they are actually getting upfront discounts. From the consumer side, Priyakshi, what I feel is that the cost of ownership is very, very important, because the initial cost is high as compared to the IC engines, but the total cost of ownership will be quite low, because more and more people will understand that to run a EV is going to be less expensive, because it's just the electricity that you have to feed your EV vehicle. So that is actually going to be a big driving factor. And the second thing is brand. Now more and more people and more consumers, they want to buy vehicles because they don't buy vehicles as such. They actually buy a brand which has got an idea, and that idea is that they are participating in mitigating the climate change which is actually happening, which is actually a global topic. So branding is very, very important. The way a brand is looked upon by its immediate consumers is going to be very, very important. It's going to be a deciding factor in the acceptance of electric vehicles in the Indian automotive scenario.
Right. Thank you, Samarth. Thanks for that. And Samarth, I'll follow this up with one more question. When
Yeah.
we talk about electric vehicles, how is it that the aesthetics and the design aspects are different as compared to ICE vehicles?
Okay. Yes. So Priyashi, we need to understand that what is so different about electric vehicles. Now, electric vehicles, they have a very different engineering structure. The way electric vehicles, the powertrain of an electric vehicle is totally different from the powertrain of a IC based engine, because they don't have an internal combustion engine, they don't have a gearbox. So that actually is a blessing in disguise for designers, because they can actually find new avenues and new opportunities to design their electric vehicles. I would say that the present scenario to me looks like, it can be broadly classified into two types of EVs or EV designs from the aesthetic perspective. Ones who are actually the followers or who don't want to challenge the status quo, and they actually want their electric vehicles to look like IC engine based vehicles. And the second are people who are like, I mean, companies who are like rebels. They want to radically shift the way EVs are perceived. And I'll give you some examples. And I think some of the uh, panelists also are actually, participating in such designs. Tesla, for example, I mean, a Tesla car today, I mean, it's like it easily fits our senses because the design is quite simple. I mean, it can be easily mistaken as an IC engine based car. But there are companies who are actually placed at the opposite end of the design spectrum. They really want to challenge the status quo because they want to show to their customers and to the world that this is an electric vehicle, which is not just a vehicle, but it is the future of mobility. So they are not just limiting their offerings to a car or a scooter or any other vehicle, but they are actually selling the concept that this is the philosophy of our brand, of our styling. This is our styling philosophy, and this is what we stand up for. Uh, some of the trends that I've been seeing, and I can actually give you live examples also. Uh, there are companies who are actually using bold colors, bold and varied colors, textures, graphics, to differentiate their brand from a normal car. Many companies have started to use very different colors so that it actually gives good vibes to the young population, fun vibe to the youngsters. Nexon, it's like the Nexon EV from Tata Motors. I mean, if you compare the petrol based Nexon and the EV Nexon, you will find that the EV Nexon has got design elements with a whiff of future. I mean, they are actually saying that this is EV for the future. Many companies have also started to leverage the advancements in lighting design. So lighting as a technology, it's not just a functional part anymore. It is also now a aesthetic part, because now more and more companies are making the or I would say leveraging the lighting design technologies as a aesthetic piece. And some of the companies are also using it to accentuate their brand philosophy, or to actually tell others that this is our design. So lighting design is going to be very, very important. Interactivity. So with technology at the forefront now, everyone who uses a car uses a mobile phone. So more and more companies will actually start interplaying with these surrounding gadgets, these surrounding things. This will actually further accentuate the futurism in EVs. Our friend Ather, our friend from Ather Energy, if you see their dashboard, it is like a flat screen, and it actually gives you that the technology. We are not away from technology. Technology is very much part of the overall EV design. So such design philosophies are going to be very, very interesting going forward with a futuristic approach. And I see these trends evolving more and more, and they are going to really radically transform the way we have been looking at automotives.
Right. So thank you. Thanks so much for that. So I'll come to Abhijit now. So
Yeah.
Abhijit, One Electric launched Creedon last year, that is a made in India motorcycle. So while there are a lot of similar products that were announced, but not many have yet entered the market. So I want to understand from you, what was your design and make philosophy? What was your product development approach that helped you get to the market fast?
Yeah, Priyakshi, good afternoon, and good afternoon to all the viewers as well. So coming to your question, we at One Electric, when we started, we were very sure, first of all, the form factor which we wanted to, come out in the market with. We were very keen on a motorcycle model, while a lot of the market was going the scooter way, especially in that time, a lot of scooters were being imported from China and sold. So we wanted to actually, we froze that the motorcycle is where we'd like to be it, and that's the segment we'd like to focus on. Another thing which we were very clear on was that we wanted this product to be, as Samar was just saying right now, I mean, easily identifiable with the masses.
Right.
So what happens is, if you want to come to market quickly, it's, the people should be able to identify a two-wheeler motorcycle. And so the design philosophy was, you could say, similar to how an IC engine bike looks, but obviously electric driven. So that was another thing which we had frozen right at the start. The prototyping and the development phase was a bit of a mixture of a lot of things. Like, we have been using 3D design and for certain parts, whereas we actually collaborated with a lot of like sheet metal fabricators, for example, and small factories, or big suppliers for parts. And we actually went around identifying the supply chain as well at a parallel level. So one was to actually develop a product, but keeping in mind that prototyping is okay. Prototyping means you focus on the prototype, but what about the production? Either you go to batch production or you go to mass production. Then you have to have the supply chain also, I would say, imbibed in the design phase as well, because you could have a radical design or a conservative design, but at the end of the day, you do need your supply chain to be able to help you with that, and supply those parts when you want to scale up. So we actually followed a multidisciplinary kind of a floating design concept, if I may say so, wherein we did not fix all the interface points perfectly in where they were supposed to be in the design. We kept the points a little bit floating around, and as and when we could freeze some components from suppliers and from our developers, we kind of started making the design more rigid. So it was a floating concept which helped us actually come to a working prototype model really, really quickly. Another thing, what we really did was, we did not, look at the complete aesthetic of the bike in a go. So we left some parts which could improve as far as your surfacing was concerned, or getting those things. But we wanted to have a functional model at the earliest, a running model at the earliest, and we were quite focused on the powertrain. So the powertrain side was developed separately. The chassis, the mainframe, and the other aspects were developed separately. And we really worked with a lot of consultants, as I said, engineering consultants, design consultants, all in parallel and tandem. So I guess, yeah, that kind of helped us squeeze the entire development aspect. But we were very clear that we wanted to come on the road, have a working model, and then along the way, keep improving. And also this gave us a great opportunity to interact with our customers. So we are having a lot of good feedback from customers, and they also say that, okay, this is great, but we would like this and we would like that. So yeah, it's a flexible and open architecture sort of plan what we worked on. This helped us, yes, definitely, in coming on the road and much faster, I guess.
Okay. So thanks, Abhijit, for sharing that.
Yeah.
Rajiv, we have seen ETO Motors L5 cargo specifications, and these are fantastic. And I think it really speaks volumes about the kind of market research we have done, because when we speak to the cargo companies who are using electric vehicles, there are concerns they voice why the vehicles cannot match the ICE vehicles. And it seems the specifications your company is promising have actually addressed those gaps. So I want to understand from you, there is one thing to identify those gaps, but once that identification is made and the scope of improvement is realized, how does the technology and the tools help you to go from there to a tangible solution?
Great. Thank you. First of all, thank you, Priyakshi, for asking this question. And I would like to answer this reflecting upon what Samad has just spoken. See, with 3,000 components coming to few tens of components, right? With the complexities of gearboxes, right? Transmissions and propeller shafts, everything taken care, right? And then the right delivery of the power to the wheel with one house called battery, and then controllers doing all the logics and algorithms and math. EV is no longer an automotive, let me tell you. EV is an electronics slash electrical slash a mechatronics product, right? A lot of electronics, a lot of software, and of course, to support the accommodation of all these things, we have mechanical components, right? It's no longer an automotive. That is the reason people don't need hundreds and 200s of acres of land to produce automotives, right? Like conventional vehicles, you really need huge landscapes to produce vehicles and huge line assemblies. But here we are talking about components being made, right? Individual module level, and then they are just assembled, right? So once this EV comes to a point that it is no longer an automotive product, it also clears off a lot of inhibitions. Say, for example, Samarth was saying that the ICE vehicle, there is a temptation for products to match to ICE vehicles, or the existing ICE companies are following the same legacy, which is not the case with the new age companies, because they have the opportunity to build grounds up from the scratch, right? For example, you look at existing three-wheelers that are in the market, right? Even at this point of time, the driver cabin is very, very tiny. If the vehicle has to be turned either left or right, that handlebar touches his hip, right? He has to do all dance in the cabin to ensure that the vehicle is manured. That is because probably their existing chassis, their existing assembly lines needs to be, I would say, compliant to ensure that the unit economics is worked out, which is not the case for the new entrants, right? For example, when you look at Eto Motors as a case, right, the whole vehicle is designed with the driver come delivery boy at the center of its universe. That is why if you look at this particular product, you see a bucket seat with seat belt, right? A huge space. Maybe if I'll just quickly, can you, in the meanwhile, you can also enable the sharing option. I will show it if required. So why that happened is because we do not carry any legacy, we do not carry any liability, and thanks for softwares like Autodesk, right? They help us experiment, tweak quickly without really investing things into it. They help us simulate, right? Especially the curve weight and how different kinds of materials can be used. Can we use ABS plastic? Can we use FRP? Or should we have to go to aluminum or steel aluminum, right? It gives us to experiment and play with all these components at the design simulation stage itself, which gives a lot more clarity and brings down our dependency on the actual investments. So with all these things, what happened is, you look at this particular thing, if I'm able to, can you see the screen?
Yes.
Yeah, see, nobody looks at this particular vehicle and then calls it as a three-wheeler. I mean, we, like somebody in the panel was mentioning, we were one of those organizations which were radical. We really want to question the status quo of why should an EV, why should a three-wheeler be look like a three-wheeler, right? Why can't it be a jazzy product? Why can't the drivers take pride in driving this particular vehicle, right? Now you look at the cabin, you look at the wheels, right? We are talking about a WagonR Seat 13-inch wheels that are brought in here. Now, all this is possible because we were able to bring, build that particular product grounds up. And look at this is the cabin that I was talking about, right? So your question, how is it that we were able to develop a product which has become the darling of the industry? The simple reasons: number one, we approached the complete development of the product with driver come delivery person at the center of our universe, and hence our customers, whether it is Amazon's, Big Baskets, Grofers, Flipkarts, whosoever you name them, they are really in love with our products. Number two, we do not carry any baggage and legacy, and hence it has given us a great opportunity to think innovatively, to think outside the box, and then adopt designs of which the drivers are, I would say, proud of. And number three, there is no constraint in terms of right, the components and all. And thanks to the simulation softwares, we are able to experiment and simulate all those things right in front of our computers. And only once we are thoroughly convinced, we went into the prototype stage and then started validating the products. I think a combination of all these things is what I would say has led us to develop a product or bring a product which has become the darling of the industry.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Rajiv, for sharing that with us. Pranav, if I can come to you next. Rajiv, if you could stop the share, please.
Yeah. Let me. I stopped it. Okay. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Pranav, I will come to you next. So we are all very excited to see Emote surge on the roads, and we have been waiting. So first of all, please let us know where are you in the product development phase right now, and when can we expect the bike on the road?
Right. So I'll just take a second to just brief the audience who doesn't know what we are making. So we're making a high performance electric motorcycle. So high performance being in the 150 to 250 cc category. And we're trying to bring it at a similar price, similar performance, and similar convenience as a petrol vehicle. This is also India's only electric vehicle to incorporate a gearbox. Now, I know a lot of the panel, a lot of people on the panel, as well as a lot others might be asking what's the point in that, but we do have a very good reason for that. Yeah. So anyway, now, in fact, what our vehicle can do, when we do launch, we will have the highest range electric vehicle in the country. Certainly, in two-wheelers, we would be able to give twice as much range as our closest competitor, as the next closest two-wheeler, actually. So with a total cumulative range of up to 450 kilometers on a single charge. So there's a lot of stuff that is new in our vehicle. The fact that we could squeeze in so much battery was possible because we designed the chassis ourselves. The battery mounting mechanism, we designed it ourselves. It's also swappable, which we had to factor in. The gearbox is totally new. It's not taken from a IC engine vehicle. It's optimized for electric drivetrain. And just a whole lot of other things, the suspension geometry, just a whole lot of things. Now this is all well and good. But the flip side of this is that we've got a lot of components that we need to make pretty much from scratch, or we need to re-engineer extensively. So that kind of means that we've got a really big supply chain, and a supply chain that we need to put a significant amount of effort into. So right now, for the last 2 years, we have been working on our supply chain. And we are right now at a stage where we are just putting the finishing touches on it. The drawings have been sent out. We're getting the first samples. So we are expecting in the next 4 to 6 months, we should be in a position to start delivering the first set of vehicles to customers.
Okay. So we look forward to that, Pranav. So I want to discuss about lightweighting. So lightweighting is anyways a very critical aspect of vehicle design, whether it's an ICE vehicle or an EV. But I want to understand from the panel, how are the dynamics different with respect to a lightweighting approach when you are designing an electric vehicle?
So is that directed to me?
Yes, you can take it. It was to the panel. Yeah.
Okay, all right. I'll go first. So yeah, in our case, we tend to adopt a hybrid approach. So what we like to do is, we like to try and predict and work out manually what the loading is, how the load's getting transferred to where it needs to go, and try to predict the shape geometry, and then we feed that into something like a simulation software and try to see what kind of results we get. If the two match up, that's great. If they don't, then we try to figure out why is there that difference? What are we doing something wrong? Was there some fundamental error in the way we set up the software or the parameters, or was there something wrong with how we thought it would be? So I think it also helps us get a better understanding of exactly what's going on where. That's about the first question. And the dynamics are certainly quite different for an electric vehicle. It's mostly, especially in two-wheelers. So in two-wheelers, it has a much bigger role to play than four-wheelers, because two-wheelers are fundamentally unstable unless they're moving at some kind of speed. And at that point, the effect of the mass, where it sits on the vehicle, that has an outsized role to play in two-wheelers and in four-wheelers. So because we move things around, we're moving the mass around, we're distributing the mass a certain way, the dynamics differ. And generally what we try to do, at least at Emote, is that we try to distribute the mass and still, but in a way that it doesn't have a very outsized effect. So all the heaviest components generally lie towards the center of the vehicle. So a mass centralization of sorts. And that is really how we do that.
All right. Thank you.
Can I also take that question, Priyakshi? Is it okay?
Go ahead. Yes, Rajiv.
Yeah. So I think that's a very, very interesting, important topic. And I always believe seeing is believing, right? So that is where I quickly shared again one more thing, right? So now coming to multiple, see, the beauty at this point of time is we have a lot of alternatives to the conventional materials that are actually used in building an automobile, right? While the regular three-wheelers are generally monocoque built or built with some kind of or cast iron, what we have taken in terms of our lightweighting approach is that ours is first of all a frame plus a body build, and our frame is made of highest grade aerospace aluminum frame, which makes the vehicle lighter, tougher, stronger, and at the same time corrosion free. Not just that, if you also look at the other materials of the product, say we are talking about, and in the cargo we have both options of an FRP as well as a steel when customers need it. So what I'm trying to communicate here is that lightweighting is an inevitable approach to be taken by EVs because of two things. Number one, it is not just about range, but also about range anxiety and ample availability of charging infra. Say, for example, in ICE vehicles, even if the weight is few grams here and there, doesn't really matter because you have fuel stations placed by the vehicle. But once you buy the vehicle, you live with it, right? You don't really have to worry. But that's not the case with EV, especially with their commercial applications, right? In last mile deliveries, because the passenger mobility and passenger adoption is stations every kilometer. Right, every gram makes a difference when it comes to the range. And because you do not have the swapping technology at this point of time, not every product is a fast charge, I would say a convenient product, right? So when these things come into an electric vehicle segment, lightweighting is an inevitable thing. And whosoever approaches this with an innovative mindset, again, not to get into a cheap mentality of changing the vehicles with the cheaper vehicles materials and then just building it. They need to build an optimum balance, that the vehicle's performance is not hindered, right? So I think that is what I would see. That is what most of the manufacturers are taking this as an approach in terms of the lightweighting technology for EVs.
Okay.
Can I add to this, Priyakshi? From a more, yeah, thank you, Rajiv. Just to add from a technology provider perspective, I would say that lightweighting is central to the design efforts by any OEM or any technology company, as you would call it, who is actually indulged in EV design or EV production or EV electric vehicle production. Because lightweighting directly affects the range, as you rightly mentioned, but it also affects the speed, and it also affects the driver's experience. Because end of the day, we are selling EVs, or you are selling EVs to people. So how and what they are feeling is also very, very important. Now, why lightweighting is also important for electric vehicles in particular is that electric vehicles are driven by batteries. Now, instead of fuel, or instead of fuel tank, instead of filling your fuel tank with fuel, you have battery packs. Now, these battery packs are really heavy because the energy density in a EV is always a challenge. You cannot actually pack more energy in an electric vehicle as compared to IC-based engine. So you are constrained to put more batteries in any vehicle. Now, how would you balance out? You cannot make your electric vehicle so heavy just because you want to increase its range. So you need to actually be more creative, and you need to actually find opportunities to reduce mass or to reduce weight, to use some innovative materials in your overall design to actually mitigate the situation. So that is also one of the factors that we should be considering.
Okay, thanks, Samath. Abhijit, I want to understand from you. Last time we were speaking, you mentioned that Creden used 3D printing a lot during their product design. So I want to understand, how does 3D printing or additive manufacturing help you work your way through things within the constraint of budgets or resources that a startup has?
Yeah, Priyanshu, I think that's a great question because now with the onset of 3D printing becoming more affordable and more easily available than it was probably I would say 10 years back. Now it's much more. It's easier to now get your design into a physical form pretty rapidly. I mean, there were cases when. So as I said earlier, we actually focused on the form factor first, and then we brought the aesthetics in. So I would say 3D printing helped us a lot in getting into the aesthetic part of the side panels, the battery cover panels, and all of that pretty quickly. We There were times when we used to upload the design onto the printers in the night, and in the morning, the machine having worked throughout the night just gave us the parts in the morning, which we could actually do the fitment, do the physical fitments, check for interference, and so on and so forth, and work on the next iteration pretty quickly.
Right.
In fact, I like to think of it this way. So we have rapid prototyping, which is very good for prototyping. So I'm very keen to look for rapid and flexible manufacturing as well as becoming the norm for the future. Because I mean, the question of scaling up into mass production, there is always an intermediary segment which you have to pass. So I guess with companies becoming more tech savvy and flexible, so rapid prototyping has helped solve a lot of that problem for us for initial design and development phase. I am just looking forward to more flexible manufacturing and rapid manufacturing technology as well to pick up here in India.
Okay. Okay, so Samarth, on this, can you discuss briefly some of the latest technologies that Autodesk has also invested in, and how the OEMs can get help there? How can they help the OEMs to focus on the design aspects or make aspects which are unique to electric mobility?
Yeah, yes, Priyakshi. As I said in my previous remark, that lightweighting is central to the EV design because of so many reasons. And this is something, a big challenge also many electric vehicles and many automotive companies, if you don't want to call the EV companies as automotive companies, even the automotive companies actually face. But with Autodesk being one of the prime technology provider to these automotive and EV companies, we are actually invested in many technologies. Now, I'll just discuss in briefly, about some of those. One is generative design. Now, generative design as a technology is like a design exploration process, and I think many of you might have heard of this. But just to actually, set things, in more perspective, what generative design does is that designers and engineers, they actually input their parameters, their design goals into the generative design software. And what generative design software does is that it calculates all the permutations and combinations and actually throws out results based on the constraints, based on the performance requirements being given by the users. These performance requirements could be the choice of materials, manufacturing process, the cost of material, or there could be many others. And what software does is that it will not give you one design or one option, but it will throw up many options. Now, what direct benefit designers and engineers get is, first of all, they will get 150 options to choose from, and the time that they would have taken to create those options, they can actually be more innovative and spend that time somewhere else. The one example that I would like to cite here is that our engineers and General Motors engineers in US, they work together on redesigning of a seat bracket, and these stories are actually there on our website also, so you can refer in. If you really want to study more, you can refer there. So what happens is that, as I said, that lightweighting is very, very critical for any automotive company. GM engineers, they created a new seat belt bracket. Previously, seat belt bracket had 8 parts, 8 disjointed separate parts. And with the use of generative design technology, their engineers could actually manage to create that part as a single part. Now, the benefit that they could get is that the new part was 40% lighter in weight, and it was 20% stronger. So it's not that they are just getting the advantage or benefit from reducing the weight, but they are also getting a lot of benefit in making that part stronger. one ancillary benefit that GM engineers also got is that since now 8 parts were reduced to only one single part, it is very, very easy for them to control or manage the supply chains, because end of the day, these components would be coming or supplied by some vendor. So this is, one of the many examples that I would like to, share, that how companies have already started leveraging this technology. Other technology that we are quite invested in is additive manufacturing, and one of the panelists also mentioned about 3D printing. So additive manufacturing, how would you manufacture a complex part which gets generated out of generative design software? Because these designs are not traditional drawable designs. These are very organic designs which are very, very futuristic. So you need to have a more what you call innovative ways or more advanced manufacturing methods to manufacture them. So additive manufacturing is something that we are invested in, so that you can optimize your material usage, and the entire process should actually consume less material. We have other technologies that we are invested in, Priakshi, and one of the things that we have been actually invested in for a very long time is virtual reality. We have solutions in place. I think Ather is already using our solutions, where they have already leveraged our visualization tools, and they have actually gone beyond that. They have actually started taking that data into virtual reality tools. Now, virtual reality is not something new. It was there, but now the difference is that virtual reality is now entering into the professional space. Now it is no more just for the gaming people. It is now entering into the professional space, and automotive companies in particular, they are actually finding a lot of value, because the decision making that used to happen previously on a physical mock-up or a physical prototype, now they can actually, they might not get 100% results, but 95% of the times, they can actually get a true understanding of which direction they are taking. So decision making becomes very fast, and it becomes very democratic. So it is not that only few people would be able to see. Anyone who has access to data can actually get immersed in virtual reality and actually see that what is the direction they are taking. From the design review perspective, also the trend that we are also seeing is that we are seeing more and more virtual reality setups at the point of sales, because now OEMs and EV companies, they just don't want to make a beautiful product. They also want to enhance the customer experience. And one of the places where they would really enhance the customer experience is the point of sale. You really go to the dealership to buy a vehicle. You cannot, if that was so boring, you could have just ordered a car on Amazon. Then what's the fun? So now more and more companies are actually getting their act together, and they are actually investing in virtual reality technologies. One is that it increases the customer experiences. Second is that they are increasing sales, because they are actually not only they are selling vehicles, but using virtual reality models, they are also selling accessories. So it is something that they are now finding their own ways to monetize the technologies that they have at their disposal.
Right.
So these are some of the technologies. We are actually invested in a lot of technologies, but EV specific and automotive specific futuristic technologies, these are the ones that we are invested in.
Right. So yeah, thanks so much for that. So what I understand from this is that the advanced software tools Autodesk is producing, or generally the simulation tools, they're acting as leveler technologies that help shorten the learning curve for new product development and new technologies. And also, it also enables the EV startups to even compete with legacy automakers, because
Correct.
they have the technology in hand, and if it is easy to use the tools to understand the newer concepts of generative design and so on, it gets them to that level comparatively easily, right?
Absolutely, Priakshi, absolutely.
Okay. So thank you, gentlemen, for sharing your thoughts with us and sharing about what product development approach you are taking in your companies. We have come to the end of the panel discussion, and we will quickly take some questions from the audience now. So thank you, Rajiv, first of all, for answering so mmany questions in the Q&A box itself. So that is very efficient. So I'll just take some questions from the audience. So Kiran, there is one question from you. Mr. Rajesh wants to know what types of electric motors are used in two-wheelers. I think it's if it is addressed to you, they maybe want to know what is the type of electric motor Simple Energy is using.
So we are using EMSM motor now. So it is like, advanced that we have used, like, it is in-house development, each and everything, like, all the electrical powertrains were developed in-house. So we have taken care of each and everything. So, I would like to say that this motor would be an far much better than what is really running in the market.
Mhm. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Kiran, for that. One question from Pankaj. Can anyone explain from design perspective about the elements in EV which require precision machining? Anyone from the panel is welcome to take this up. I'll repeat the question. Can anyone explain from design perspective about the elements in EV which require precision machining?
I think he is mainly talking of the component designs or something like that. So maybe, people who are actually, they have, worked in this domain can answer that. Or maybe we can answer it later.
Okay. Another question, what are the important considerations while designing a prototype? Pranav, if you would like to take that.
Yeah, sure. Well, designing a prototype sounds a bit wrong, because well, designing is all well and good. It's making a prototype that takes a lot of effort. So I think what the question would be is that what considerations you do when you're designing for making a prototype.
Right.
So I think one is that you should always try to keep your designs grounded, right? And don't count on using exotic materials or exotic processes to do what you want the vehicle to do, or what you want your product to do. That's certainly a good starting point. And then the other thing is, always remember, prototyping is something that takes a lot of effort. So any small thing that you do when you're designing, you will have to eventually produce it before. I mean, and that's a necessary step. I mean, you can't bypass prototyping and get straight to manufacturing. That just doesn't happen. You are going to have the same problems that you were when you were prototyping it. Yeah, and one more thing is that when you're prototyping, you tend to use different processes. So you can afford to make you can afford to not make it, put an extra effort to make it manufacturable. But if you're looking from the point of manufacturing it, and you want your prototypes to reflect that, then your designs need to have that extra work put in. So for example, something as simple as draft angles, right? You do need to put in that extra effort if you don't want to end up making too many prototypes and too many iterations.
Right. Thank you. Swagat, there is a question directed at you. See if you want to take this. What would be the realistic safety scenario during a thermal runaway scenario in an Ather scooter?
I'm not sure who asked this question, but we've sort of taken care that it doesn't come to that, right? Safety presets that are built into the system, where it actually takes care of, in the unfortunate eventuality of something like this happening, there are enough safety presets that are built into the system that sort of saves the customer or the user from any sort of harm. So that is one worry that we've taken off from the customer.
Right, because I think very initially when the EV started appearing on the scene, people had these concerns that what if it rains, what if there is a short circuit, but
yes,
we don't see that happening, at least with good made in India products that have been thoroughly researched and in the market for some time. We haven't seen any incidents like that. So I think people
yes,
can be assured of safety when they are buying a good quality electric vehicle.
Absolutely.
Right. So there is one question. Okay, I just lost it. How is generative design and additive manufacturing helping in the EV industry? I think it has been answered in Samarth's talk. But Akash, if you have any particular aspect you want to discuss, please type that as a question. Otherwise, this aspect I think we've already covered. Again, one question on what 3D printing technology is used. Please, I would request the audience to type their questions with a little more detail and little more, be a little more specific in what you are asking. Pranav, can you elaborate the hybrid approach you are exploring? You talked about lightweighting.
Yes. Yeah, so I think in a nutshell, I kind of explained it. So yeah, what we try to do is we try to work it out ourselves without relying on other software or tools. How the load is getting transmitted, for example, in the chassis that we have designed, right? And so we know exactly where. I mean, we can work out where exactly the load is acting, how it has to be transmitted to the ground, a few things like that. And we try to make use of the best design practices in order to do that efficiently and in a very, in the most optimized manner. So optimized in the sense of material usage or cost usage, right? Mm-hmm. Now, so that way it's a little bit old school. So when I said hybrid, I meant that we not only do it manually, but we also tend to rely on models, software and tools to come to the to verify our calculations. Now, so after we have predicted what the shape should be, we put it into some simulation software and then look at if our calculations are correct, if the part is experiencing some unexpected stress concentrating in a certain location or something. So a few things like that. Sometimes it's just a little small thing because there's just a little kink in the metal or so, which can be easily fixed, and it does not really make a difference to our part. But very rarely we come across results that digress from what we predicted. So then the next step is, okay, why did this difference happen? I mean, why could we not predict accurately what was supposed to happen? Then there's only two things that can be the problem. One is that we did something wrong. We missed some, we forgot to factor something in our calculation, or we forgot to input something correctly in the software. So this way, when we try to figure out, okay, why did this not work? It helps us get a better hang on what all is involved into, say, simulating, for example, a chassis or the swing arm. Now, I think as an example of what we've been able to achieve, and I think this works really well for us, because like I said, most of the parts we almost never had to go back to the drawing board and okay, realize when we ran the simulation that, okay, this does not work and we made a big mistake somewhere. So I think our vehicle weighs as much as a scooter, and we are making a motorcycle, right? So typically you would expect IC engine motorcycles to weigh around 150 kilograms. We weigh about 120 kilograms, which is just about what, or maybe 5 kilograms more than what petrol scooters weigh, or even electric scooters weigh.
Right. Thank you, Pranav. Abhijit, there is one question that I think you should be able to answer. How is India at an advantage in manufacturing EVs compared to China? Can we make electric vehicles cheaper than Chinese? You are on mute, Abhijit.
Sorry, yeah, I'm not sure how to answer that because traditionally or historically, EV is synonymous with Chinese imports. But as I said earlier, I think flexible manufacturing or rapid manufacturing may probably help us get good quality products out. And obviously, Indian manufacturing scene is catching up. There's no doubt in that. A lot of robotics and automation has now been implemented, right, in manufacturing. But it's all for just mass production. It's not to actually give that flexibility. So if I want to make, say, a batch of, say, 500 or 1,000 pieces, it's just not possible to get some mass production supplier to give those pieces to me. So, rather than compare between China and India, I think it's just what we should do what we are best at. I read earlier in one of your in one of your articles, which you had published, somebody said India is great at reverse engineering. So, well, reverse engineering is there, but you also improve in that reverse engineering. So that's something which we can do, I think, fairly better than anybody else. Well, the Indian Jugaad is always there to help us better our techniques. But yeah, I think we should have our own challenges. I mean, rather than compare, because China is a completely different ball game. I mean, you just can't compare India, as Samarth also said, the geopolitical situation in India versus China is totally different. So, and that does affect manufacturers as well. The policies are different. So it's not a fair comparison. It's just, I would say, definitely tougher for us, as a country. But yeah, we are getting there. I mean, with some policies from the government, I would say forcing manufacturing and adoption of EVs in India. Well, we will get there eventually for sure.
Yes.
And the road's quite bright.
Right, of course. You have to make, when we make, see, the comparisons will come, because how EV industry started in India was through the imports. And when we are talking about Make in India, then of course we look at what is the price difference we are getting to. And because that is going to play a big part in how much we adopt and how quickly we adopt electric mobility. So of course the questions and the comparisons will come, but yes, let's just hope that with the focus on Make in India policies and products, we will get there. There is one question on how generative designing is helping the specific needs of panelists in India. As in, do their scooter, bike, or auto has any generatively designed part? So, Samarth, I think you can answer this. How much has generative design taken up as a technology within the Indian ecosystem?
Generative design is fairly a new concept in India, because I think in the natural way is to adopt the success stories. So we have success stories which we have developed in the West, in the Western world. And slowly now the Indian companies are seeing value. Like, for example, the General Motors example I shared is a perfect example which has inspired many Indian automotive companies. Now it is, I would leave it to people like Swagat and Kiran and other people on the panel who can actually, see the value of generative design and start, planning that how they can actually adopt these technologies in their next, upcoming design model.
Right. Thank you. Thanks. I think we have covered, many of the questions are repeated or already been covered during the discussions today. So to our audience, if you have put a question that we are not taking up, we will be sharing the link to this recorded session. The questions and those aspects have already been discussed. So you can go through the recording and you will have a fair idea of what you're looking for. So with that, if there are any closing notes from any of the panelists, I would welcome that. And after that, we can wrap up the session.
Priyaksha, if I can just take, there was a couple of questions around charging, which I think we didn't touch upon. So I just want to go ahead and as a closing statement, probably talk about that a little bit.
Sure, please go ahead.
Yeah. So one of the questions was what are the major challenges that EVs sort of today face in India, right? And I think one of the major or the biggest challenges that we face today is around charging infrastructure itself, right? The fact that there's a lot of range anxiety amongst customers when it comes to EVs, right? One of the biggest sort of hurdles is to convince people despite of that, right? Which becomes a big problem. But then what we need to do is the charging infrastructure game. That's why, right? Especially at least with Ather, what we're trying to do is we set up a charging infrastructure first, whichever city we go to, and then we introduce our product, right? So our focus has been equally on setting up the infrastructure for the vehicles also, and not just delivering the scooter to people and then letting them figure out how they're going to charge the vehicle, right? That's not how it's going to be. It's not going to be very viable for the customers, right? So charging today is one of the major problems to be solved. And in fact, some level of standardization amongst charging as well is required, right? And there are multiple ways of actually looking at this problem statement, right? You have battery swapping technology, which is one way of tackling this problem. That you have fast charging, which is another way of tackling this problem, right? So, and while battery swapping is great, like in terms of initial adoption of things, but at least for me personally, I don't think it's a very scalable solution, right? When it comes to scale, it might not work as efficiently as, say, a fast charging solution, right? So the fast charging, I think fast charging charging infrastructure definitely needs more traction within our country, something that we are also working towards. And also, I think standardization has to come in to the charging game as well, so that like more and more people can use the infrastructure around them.
Right, definitely. So we see that with respect to standardization of charging infrastructure, that we know that there is a BIS committee that is working on creating
Yes.
those standards, and they recently also announced there was a 3,500 rupees small AC charger that is going to come in 3 to 4 months, and there, so from there on they will keep on standardizing the higher specifications as well. So yeah, so we are, I think, moving in the right direction with respect to localization, standardization. It's just that let's see how much pace we can keep. And so thank you, gentlemen, for joining us. And I would like to thank all the audience members for being a part of this session today. On behalf of Autodesk and EV Reporter, I would like to thank you all, and we hope to bring together more of such events to discuss different aspects of electric mobility, challenges and opportunities this space opens up for all of us. So have a great evening, everyone, and stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.